Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. I'm Peter, president here at Anderson Ranch. So excited to welcome you on behalf of our trustees and my colleagues to this really special talk today on art, architecture, and design. See so many of you National Council in the room. I really appreciate your support. I saw so many of you on Monday at our welcome event. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Allison Janae Hamilton. I hope you also really enjoyed the art collection of our hosts, Effie and Rachel Gildor, from Picasso's to James Turrell to Jeff Koons. It was just a really, even for Aspen, a remarkable collection. And I know some of you felt a little competition when I said that, but you can show off yours at our next event. Our gala is coming up next week, honoring Titus Kaphar. That is hosted by Sherry and Joe Felsen, Martha and Richard Finger, Carolyn and Alex Hurst. There are still some tickets available. We'd love to see you join us. The live auction items are on display in the Welcome Center Gallery. Please take a look at them when you leave here. You can bid remotely. You can email them to friends, tell them to bid remotely. But we would love you to see what's up there and really help us get the word out on the opportunity to buy those pieces. Our first our first summer series lecture will be next week. This is a special lecture. That's our series lecture. You get special. So really welcome. Just a quick reminder, special day, Wednesday, special time, 11 o'clock. That will feature Titus Kaphar as well in a public lecture. So we hope you will join us for that. Quick shout out, I think I saw the Lewises come in. They are our title underwriters for that lecture, and I know many of you are sponsors as well, so thank you for all that work. Our talk today is about art, architecture, and design. I can't resist starting by pointing out we are in this remarkable building on a remarkable campus, a unified designed campus to really support the work we do. Harry Teague is here somewhere hiding, but a quick shout out. This is an amazing campus, and that design is a big part of our history here. We have a furniture and woodworking program for many years. Some of you remember seeing Sam Maloof wander around campus. A few of you even saw him pick up that raw piece of lumber and like hand feed it through a table saw to get the perfect arch and curve of that piece. That legacy of design and furniture making continues on campus. I think Brad Reed Nelson is sitting outside. He is here teaching a course this week. We have workshops throughout the summer on design and architecture, and I hope you will step in and join some of those classes. We really believe in learning by getting your hands dirty around here, so please come join us. So tonight, I'm really excited to continue that legacy of furniture making and design here on campus. Rachel Scheckman is one of our new trustees. She's hiding here somewhere in front. She really brought this idea to us a few months ago, which I will say is shorter than our normal planning cycle. But what an amazing opportunity. The Judds had not been here to the Valley to talk about their father's furniture. She had been to Marfa, spent some time with them, and was super energized by the work and the legacy that's continuing and how it really, the synergy with our legacy about furniture making and design here on campus. So extremely excited to have you all here. Honored to introduce Paola Antonelli, Senior Curator of Architecture and Design at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. I believe also a design conference founding board member. Maybe you can talk about that later. That one came up to me about 10 minutes ago, so we'll throw that out there.
It was 1951, so no, I was not around yet.
You weren't even alive.
I participated in it. No, but
a connection to that,
here.
so hopefully we can hear a little bit about that today. Really one of the foremost thought leaders on the influence and impact of design in our lives, so we're excited to have you lead the conversation today. Paula will be in conversation with Rainer Judd, president of the Judd Foundation, and Flavin Judd, who is the artistic director of the Judd Foundation. So thank you very much, and I will pass to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's like really wonderful to be here.
Yeah, we definitely want to thank Anderson Ranch for having us here. Can you hear me, Kevin?
Oh, Kevin, what's happening?
We're doing a quick sound check right here. I'm just going to keep talking. I can talk louder. Anyway, Judd Foundation is in Marfa and New York City, and Paola, obviously, New York City, so it's fantastic to be here. You guys are definitely lucky with this temperature, and you're so lucky to have Anderson Ranch. So thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. And in particular, personally, you can hear me. Yeah, but we cannot hear. Do we want to wait a second until Kevin is, you're getting the ice cream cone, as we call it in Italy.
Okay, I know how to work the ice cream cone.
You like the ice cream cone? Yeah, good. Perfect. Did you want to say it again?
Just thank you.
Just thank you. And I also thank you. And now you can't hear me. No, yeah, now it's working. Thank you. Yeah, okay, great. So I'm particularly happy to be here today, and I'm thankful to Flavin and Rainer for inviting me, because that really goes to tell you about how they take their father's legacy and their work today. You know, as a curator at MoMA and having been around the world of design for many decades, I've seen so many legacies being destroyed by a misunderstanding and also by a different, ambiguous kind of entanglement with it. I have never seen kids like Rainer and Flavin that have their own life, their own identities, and nonetheless completely channel not simply the work, but the whole philosophy of what Marfa and what architecture and design and art for Donald Judd was. So I'm really touched to have been invited, and I'm particularly touched because they know very well that I'm a bigoted, prejudiced design curator that has been saying for many years that
the best bigoted design curator.
Prejudiced curator that says that.
But
yeah.
what better place to make friends than Aspen?
Exactly. That has forever said that artists should not do design. So it's really interesting to have this conversation today because they gave me a chance to face my prejudice and to also get to know them. And all of a sudden, I am a little embarrassed to have been so bigoted all the time, but after all, I was right for many other cases. So we'll talk about it today.
So it's kind of like reaching across the aisle.
Yeah, but that happens even more. It's trying to understand the question was what design is. I mean, there are some tenets that we'll discuss together today that don't change, but there's a lot of beauty in what you and in what your father was doing. And you're looking here at a picture of Rainer, and there's also, Rainer is behind her mom, Julie Finch, and then there's like Flavin in the back there. In the 1960s, I think it was 65.
This is 70.
70, thank you. So 75.
70.
1970, perfect, thank you so much. At 101 Spring, so the home where they grew up and then where they grew up with the furniture. And we'll talk about it more later. So today I took a particular tack to open the discussion. I don't know if you've read those books by Marcus Lansky, Cod, Salt, you know, the books that look at the history of the world through one staple. And I decided that to have a good conversation, we could talk about chairs. Chairs, after all, are the rite of initiation for any designer. They are the object where the sky, the idea of design, meets the earth, which is the body of a human being. And they also are quintessentially the way to understand the difference between design and art, which is the reality check. Artists can feel free to have that reality check and to work for other human beings. Designers have to be by definition. Then there can be good and bad design, but there is that reality check that is always undergirding. And actually, it's interesting because I also found quotations by Don Judd saying the same. And I'm showing you here on the right-hand side my favorite chair in the world, which is the beanbag, the sacco. I've always loved it because it has infinite positions. And then a very famous chair that was a manifesto. So you have here manifesto chair and then a chair that is also manifesto, one from the early 20th century and the other from 1968. So it also conveyed a whole change in culture that is fascinating, both of them. So chairs often come out of necessity, and that's also what Don Judd, I found, said in a beautiful interview that I'll talk about more before. And these are three exemplary chairs that have become archetype. One is the tonnet chair that comes from a technological innovation. Another one is the shaker chair, a vernacular chair if one wants to use that adjective. And then the Charles and Ray Eames side chair that came also from a technological innovation and was a way to use fiberglass that had been used during World War II to repair radars in airplanes to be used then in the civilian world. So these chairs are unforgettable and important, and it shows a little bit what could happen also with other new materials. So the side chair by Charles and Ray Eames was fiberglass, and so was the Werner Panton chair, which also comes from a moment in which the fiberglass could be cantilevered because of the innovation in resin and in fibers. So sometimes innovation in materials really bring to completely new forms, and in some cases also to kind of toxic or ambiguous objects. I'm showing to you right now an exhibition that is up at MoMA that I curated that's called Pirouette, that talks about objects that changed society, that really percolated down to the real world. And for good and for bad, the monoblock chair that you see there did change the world. For bad, because it's become the emblem of pollution and consumerism. For good, because it's a chair that used technology in a new way. Monoblock means that you could stamp it and just spit it out of the mold of the steel or aluminum mold and manufacture many. And we were discussing with Rainer before this adjective that when attributed to design is so annoying, which is democratic. But in this case, it was really the emblem of a chair that really went everywhere, from dictators in the stands to instead, even ice cream stores in Italy. It's a chair that normally wouldn't be at MoMA, but we need to start tackling what actually design really does to the world. And so to look also at examples of ambiguous and maybe even bad design every now and then. There are chairs by designers that look like they are art chairs, if one wants to use that strange kind of attribute, because they're chairs that are not necessarily functional. One is an example is Gaetano Pesce's Pratt chair. The idea was to show how different concentration and composition of resin could lead to 10 different chairs, one super rigid, the chair number 1, and then chair number 12 instead splattered on the floor. So demonstrating how you could have a diversified series. And then, a similar example is Marcel Wander's knotted chair from '95 using the new epoxy resins, right? So knotted cord, then put in shape by epoxy and solidified. So there are chairs that have really a very poetic kind of presence, and they're not necessarily functional, and they're still designed because they try to still think of pushing the world for further. Then, the idea that many designers have to look at chairs that are traditional, that have existed forever, and reinterpret them for today is something that is also very common in great design. You see on the right-hand side a typical Italian chair, peasant chair that's existed forever, that's called Chiavarina, from the city of Chiavari, which is in Liguria, where it was mostly attributed to. And then you see Gio Ponti on the left-hand side, great designer, that amongst other objects also designed this super leggera, the super light chair for Cassina, the manufacturer, by taking the Chiavarina and making it even lighter, trying to make the section of the chair from a round or a square to a triangle. So this kind of distillation of traditional knowledge. The same has happened also when Western designers have tried to understand and to learn from Africa. You see here the palaver chair from Senegal on the left that was a chair for big meetings of elders, and on the right-hand side a birthing chair from the Ivory Coast. And the attempt by Hela Jongerius in 1999 to interpret this three-legged chair using contemporary materials. Now it would be considered almost appropriation. At that time it was still an acceptable experiment, but there's so much to learn from what has already happened. So to kind of put it all together here before we start talking about Donald Judd's furniture, you see here several different chairs that kind of show many approaches. So if you move to the staple chairs, like the Sacco chair or the Tonet chair, or even the iron chair, whether you like it or not, it really had an enormous impact on society. And it was because you were able to have this upholstered chair that also let you breathe. There was the ability to have this pellicle that was really transformative, as was the hyper-engineered mechanism that nobody ever learned how to use. Amongst the same chairs, you have instead these experiments in material that are almost poetic. I told you already about Gaetano Pesce, Shiro Kuramata, trying to distill acrylic into almost crystal, and experimenting with the right roses. He tried first with real roses and they rot, and then he tried with silk roses and the acrylic ate the silk, so finally it's this polyester roses. So the idea of rendering an idea with the materials at one's disposal. And then the last example is this recycled agro-waste chair that is much more contemporary and tries to talk about the situation in which we are today. So designing chairs is, for some, close to a science. This is Konstantin Grcic, who has designed several chairs, very inventive, but very much about industrial production. And in some cases, it's the attempt to use different materials. These are two chairs. The one on the left-hand side was a challenge by Issei Miyake given to all designers in the world to try and find ways to reuse the leftover paper from the pleating, the pleats please from the pleating process. And that's where Nendo did this cabbage chair. And on the right-hand side, we have Jasper Morrison, who has become a very well-known designer. One of his first examples at the university was the Thinking Man's chair, in which he was trying to find the perfect curvature according to carpenters, even though he was using metal for it and looking at the radius and all the different processes that could lead to the chair. Flavin in particular wanted me to include this slide because it's going to be part of our conversation of the Bertoia chair, the Bertoia side chair. That's the sculpture garden of the Museum of Modern Art, a notoriously uncomfortable chair unless you put, how did you call it?
The cheese grater.
The cheese grater, we call it the grid chair because it completely. So this was an example. And then paradoxically, what's happening today with the attention that is put on reuse and upcycle, this is the work of Martino Gamper, who has become like the dad of so many designers of today, and an experiment in particular that he did that was called 100 Chairs in 100 Days. For 100 days, he went around London, picked up every day different pieces in the trash from pieces of furniture, and every day he would make a chair. And this became almost a manifesto for all younger designers, and here is one of his pupils, Max Lamb. But interestingly, Max goes instead towards almost a Scott Burton idea of seating as art. And it's interesting how, even in this case, I found this quote by your dad that I find really interesting. I just want to say because I really was happy to find it. He said, "I hardly know about Robert Wilson." Somebody was asking him about Robert Wilson. But I saw a couple of his production a long time ago in Boston, and I think those chairs are just ridiculous and I have no interest. And I'm highly against, as you might guess, furniture as art. It is kind of silly. So I did not really like or agree with Scott Burton, for example. So this whole idea of the pieces of materials experimented as furniture while they behave a little bit like art. So many years ago, I wrote an essay that was called Thrones for the Common Man. Today it would be Throne for the Common Person, but at that time it was almost 30 years ago, so I could get away with it. And here you see two chairs that kind of explain the range that exists in the MoMA design collection. On the left-hand side, a stool by Joseph Hoffmann from the beginning of the 20th century, Vienna, and on the right-hand side, a chair by Tokujin Yoshioka that is almost like a Chinese lantern. It's out of paper, it comes flat, you open it up, spray a little bit of water on it, then you sit, and it becomes your chair. And the one at MoMA, if you understand what I mean, is my chair. And yeah, so, but in truth, the real spirit, we've seen all this different modulation of chairs and experimentation. But what we would like to discuss today is this idea of chairs that go in the real world. And Raina reminded me when I showed her the presentation of this beautiful catalog of box furniture by Louise Brigham from 1909, in which she was trying to really put out in the world this kind of patterns, as if you had clothing patterns, and instead they were patterns for other people, for them to build their own furniture using leftover boxes and pallets. And in inspiration of this, I don't know if he was really inspired, I wanted to bring up because we need a little dose of Marxist design these days. My beloved Enzo Mari, very cantankerous and wonderful designer based in Milan, who amongst other really radical projects also did this project called Autoprogettazione, self-design, in 1974. So the lead years in Italy during terrorism was very heated. He put out as design a book with all sorts of instructions for people to make their own furniture, even elaborate pieces of furniture, like you see the bed at the bottom is quite beautiful and elaborate, and left it out for anybody to use and produce, to the point that a few years ago, a group of immigrants from Northern Africa in Berlin started a company that would make that kind of furniture for very low prices, available to everybody, with also parts that were painted. So there are many different modulations in chairs and in design. I'm particularly, the chip on my shoulder maybe is due to the fact that I love design that goes into the world. And what I would like to discuss with you today is really that idea. You grew up with this gorgeous furniture. We're sitting today on the 84/8 slanted, front slant chair, as we said today. And you have been passionate and very, very, very expressive in talking about your father's furniture. Oh no, we don't want that. Yeah, we see we can. We don't want our self-portraits. About talking about your father's furniture. So I would like to understand really, number one, what it meant to grow up with it, and how do you express this idea of living with it in the world today? Yay, Rainer? No.
Well, Don says in his essay that when we moved to Marfa in the early 70s, there was no furniture to buy because there was only like lawn chair furniture, which was aluminum tubing, the kind you put outside, or there was the kind of lazy boy / fake Victorian ornate furniture with plastic cushions, so that was not acceptable.
And there were water beds.
Water beds.
So there was no furniture to buy, so hence you had to make your own furniture. And I didn't know that not everybody made their own furniture. I mean, that seemed natural to me that you'd make your own furniture. And when we needed a bed, Don designed a bed, and then they cut the boards and he nailed it together. So it was very much about a practicality. But of course, Don's thinking is very, very consistent, and it's very much based on an idea of what the world is and what it should be. And so the furniture that he made had to conform to that way of thinking. And so the chairs that came out of that situation are what he made. And as far as the broader world,
yeah, how did that step happen? How did it go from your home to the world?
Wait, before you guys get into the bigger world, which is about more than a decade later, I just want to add that even though his grandfather and his father were very good carpenters, he was not a good carpenter. So the early designs, the made to cut from the local hardware store, Foxworth Galbraith, the boards were, I don't know if we have a picture of
the gray,
the Lujan house, or even the desk.
the black and white image.
Yeah, the black. When you see some black and white images, that might be what the pieces I'm talking about. Those designs came out of a need for someone who's not a good carpenter to be able to nail them together.
Huh.
And I think that's helpful to know, because also just because you have limitations should not limit your invention. It's a good thing to carry forward. But then, as he had been doing in his art, he started working with people who were much more capable in woodworking than him, and then he was able to innovate. For example, this is originally a 1x12 design before it was ever made in plywood, and this is something that Don Judd himself would not have been able to make in either the plywood or the 1x12. Okay, back to the...
Did he ever make it, did he ever see it made like this?
Oh, yeah.
Of course. so
I'm not
perfectly
sure
made.
we make anything that he didn't see made.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure.
Maybe a finish that he didn't see, but
Because
no
this is another
designs.
case in which I've seen legacies transformed or interpreted or adapted to the market. So I know that you've never done it, except I've seen that there's that particular color, that green color, that is being discontinued.
But
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
might-
Andrea.
Nothing is static in the materials.
Yes.
We can't do anything about that. Paints come and go.
This is the lawn
woods
chair.
come and go.
Oh, yeah.
That was the lawn chair that, and then that's the bed that was made with by Don in terms of using a hammer, and those are boards that were ordered from the local hardware store.
This is 101 Spring?
No, this is the house in Marfa that
Oh, the
Rainer
house
lives
in
in
Marfa
now.
already. Okay. So how did the move to the outer world happen?
That's the desk that was made, the boards to order, cut to order.
Okay.
Same time period as the bed that we just saw. Sorry.
No, and then how did it go from the furniture that was made for you to instead a production line?
Probably the shortest route to answer that is to mention Dudley Del Balso, who actually used to have a house in Aspen. Last time I
really?
was in Aspen, I stayed at Dudley's house, so I don't know if anybody here knew Dudley, who is still with us in the world, but just not in Aspen. Dudley Del Balso organized an exhibition in 1983 at Max Protest Gallery, still assisting and working studio manager type work with Don, and he had started making the bent sheet metal pieces in Switzerland with Lenny, and thought that that would be a good show to start with. So those were, I think, her pushing him into making pieces to sell,
And
like as furniture, not art.
and what happened afterwards? So to go from that to right now, you have a very sophisticated production company. You know, it's like you manufacture in different parts of the world, and you manufacture metal, if I'm not mistaken, in Switzerland.
At the same place that I was just referring
Yeah,
to.
and the wood instead is in the United States, right?
Yes. Yes.
And you take care of it like really hands-on yourself. So how do you keep the whole production and the market going?
With
God
ham-fisted
knows.
authority.
Fabrication, one term we have is fabrication security, and that means that there are people who are living and who are not retiring this afternoon, who are capable of making it, and that has been a challenge that we've been working on for the last few years that we're feeling better about now. But it really is a long-term commitment to make sure that there are people who know how to make it and that the quality standards are kept.
Are kept really high. And when you hear somebody like me, I want to tell you about this.
We should talk about
Yeah,
quality
exactly.
because there are a few different qualities within original Judd furniture. There are the pieces that are made in Marfa that preceded the pieces like the black and white. Pretty much everything you see in Marfa. I just fact-checked myself and realized I was wrong. The wooden 2x12 and the 1x12s we were just looking at are rougher, but when he started working with wood craftspeople in New York City, things got a little fancier.
Oh, really?
And that, I think plywood has always been in the fancy realm. Plywood has never been made in the rougher Marfa small town quality, but there are some of us, I can speak for myself, that really love and crave the rougher Marfa style because it's just not uptown-ish at all. And yet it has this, it still gives the gift of being Judd furniture, but in a different way, more humble quality.
This is super interesting. So when you hear me with my prejudice and my bigoted positions
We're prejudiced.
about...
We're biased. We love Judd furniture. So
Of
it's
course.
like
Of course.
bias meets bias.
Yay! So let's talk about the bias, big bias. So what do you think about the... You moving?
I'm just moving back.
Oh, okay.
I'm
I was
leaving.
like,
No, just kidding.
oh, no, I see. So what do you think about this statement that I made that artists should not make furniture, with some exceptions, and I think it is
Probably
an
a good
exception.
idea.
It's probably a good idea, yes.
I think everybody should make their own furniture, so it
There you
doesn't
go.
work for me.
Exactly. No, and this is what I was thinking. I was thinking, why do I say that? I guess that when you make your own furniture and you make mistakes and you make, whatever happens with your furniture, I think that's all very good and true. I think that it's the market that then changes things around. We were discussing about the fact that design that is available only to very few is a different kind of design. And I don't know what the price points are
These
right
are a
now.
lot of subjects you're packing into.
Yeah, no, I know.
So there is the freedom of making, and everybody should be free to make, and it shouldn't have
Always.
anything to do with the market. And then there is the whole conversation of what is a market, and even just using money to buy things should be discussed. But as a community, when you're making things, you could just, each community can make things within the community and share it. So I think it's good to talk about making things that's even separate than having a product to market.
So how would you feel if somebody made their own Judd furniture? And I'm not talking about another company
People
knocking
do.
it off. People do,
Yeah,
and
and we try to communicate with them.
that's perfect.
We're
And
very nice at the beginning.
you were, and then what happened?
Well, then we'll
It
see.
kind of depends what's happening. Generally, and unspoken, even though we've talked about speaking it, there is a general embrace of artists who, we have a friend, an artist named Rachel Lakowitz, who maybe in the late 90s made a Judd chair out of red lipstick. And we
Wow.
thought that was really interesting.
But nobody could sit on it. That was a piece of
No,
art.
but that was something that fit under a beautiful sentence we once wrote that I don't know where that sentence went, about artistic expression and artistic freedom.
Sure.
So I think there's a certain realm within artistic experimentation that should not receive any kind of phone call from us.
But what about a design experimentation? Like you were asking me, Flavin, what do I do
Yeah, I
with
think
my
it's just-
hands? And I was saying cooking. What if I went home and decided, you know what, I'm going to make my own 84 slanted chair?
Probably if we don't
But
know
if it
about
has your experience and your personality, it won't be. It'll be something else, and that's the whole idea.
That's true. You are
And I
limiting
think-
yourself.
And I think that it's important that the language not get in the way of the thing, and you don't worry about the definitions of furniture, which is a huge kind of vague category, and you kind of pay attention to the actual object, of which there are, since the objects are singular,
Yeah.
and that makes it much more interesting. So why talk about the vague category when you don't have to?
And
So,
also,
and if you make a chair out of pasta, I'm dying to
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, I know, but then I cannot sit on it. I'm talking about a chair done
you
with the
can.
same.
You can make a chair out of pasta and be able to sit on it.
Probably, yeah. I've never tried, not if it's cooked. No, but
If
you're
you
right.
use a little resin, you'd be fine.
But so do you think when you see something like Enzo Mari, that is not what the Donald Judd's, the autoprogettazione, the self-design, or the box furniture book, that is not really what
We're
the
not
intention
there right
was.
now, but I want to say approach two different things. I think there's the issue of we have not worked through our constraints from a production angle that allow the price of Judd furniture at the quality it needs to be affordable. So affordability is not something we have achieved, to answer that. But in regard to people making things, Don wrote a lot repeatedly in different ways, different sentences, decade after decade, about inventing and making things original to yourself. And he used a description of potentially Matisse's brain, that the inside of his brain did not look like the inside of Matisse's brain. And when you look at a Matisse, he would explain that it's like looking at the inside of Matisse's brain. That is the language, the visual language that is coming out of Matisse. There is potential that each human has something inherent in them that is of them. So sure, you can experiment and make something like a shaker chair and see what it feels like to make a chair, but the end goal is to
To
invent
make yourself.
and find out what is the language on the inside of your brain. It might be writing, it might be something else, but there is a certain mandate for a human, for a lifetime, to explore your own self. So these are all tools for how to become more of who you are and who you just showed up as. Not to go become somebody else that lived 200 years ago or that you saw on Instagram.
So you were never, or were you ever tempted? I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Were you ever tempted to explore your own brains through furniture? Did
No.
you ever design your own or make variations?
Design, yes. Make, no. I had some tables made, but that was because we needed some tables. But
Were they different?
out of absolute necessity, yes.
Out of absolute necessity.
Yeah, I did a few things out of necessity. He made some beautiful shelves that I love.
Flavin?
Yeah.
We needed shelves. What are you going to do?
And then Don encouraged me to go tell his carpenter I needed some shelves and just tell him how you want them made. Cut.
And within the communication of Don's amazing work and over to the world, where does the furniture and the design sit? Do you communicate differently?
Sorry, what was the beginning of the question?
The beginning, when, as the foundation, not only do you support new art and new artists, but also you communicate your father's legacy to the world. So there was that beautiful exhibition at MoMA by my colleague Ann Temkin. It was just fabulous, and it also had some of the furniture, but it was mostly on the art. So there was a separation.
Yes, and those were newly made pieces
Yes.
for her for order by MoMA.
So do you keep the communication of the design and the communication of the art separate when you explain Don to the world?
The communication.
It depends. Sometimes you're talking about what he's doing in general, and you're talking about the art and the furniture and the writings and the architecture.
And then
so
it has to become
sometimes
this
you're
design
explaining
aspect.
the reason the chair is not art and that you sit on it is because it has a use.
And
so.
we have these installed spaces. We have many, many installed spaces of his that have both furniture and art and architecture in them. So we show up fairly integrated. However, we are aware that within the market activity, that the furniture is furniture and the art is art, and never the two shall be switched.
Interesting. Yeah, so that's very
So
important.
it's more, I think, about communication within the marketplace, or even the institutional. I would say that from the beginning, institutions were more likely to want to mush it all together. But we pretty much let the spaces have it combined, but not so much. I think MoMA did it well, where they had the furniture outside in that area.
in that space. Yeah.
For the MoMA show, we had a big show at MoMA, and it was on the top floor, and it included one of their bookstores. So we took all their furniture out and replaced it all with Judd furniture for their bookstore. So that's what they're referring to.
And it was in 2020, so I don't know if many
Nobody
of you
saw it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. It was just like
March of 2020.
Yes.
when it opened.
Yes.
The longest running, least seen show at MoMA in
Yeah,
history.
it was magnificent, I gotta tell you. So that's very interesting. So you keep the communication separate, because I was having a conversation with Julian Rose, who wrote a lot about you, and we were talking about Don's work as in history of architecture, you call it the Gesamtkunstwerk. So everything designed, like from the chair to the whole space, which is not true because your father mixed a lot. There was, you allowed me to hang out at 101 Spring Street for a while the other day, and it was fantastic to see also the Shakers furniture being mixed, and
Stickly, a lot of
stickly and industrial. But this idea of having everything together and really being part of your father's mind is a beautiful way to see. And I know that you're reopening the architectural studio.
Architecture office.
The architectural office. Okay, the architectural
Across the street from the architecture office. So
In
who's
Marfa.
been to Marfa? All
Hi,
right.
yay.
Highest quotient.
Bus leaves in an hour for the rest of you.
And somebody here grew up in Marfa?
Yes, actually there are two. There's somebody else there. Raise your hand again. Yay.
What's your name? Oh, El Paso. Cool. West Texans. So we have some buildings that our dad bought in the late 80s and 90s because there was a bit of what happened?
She wants to bring it up a bit.
I'll hold it. I was just going to explain that we have some buildings on what is the main street of Marfa because Don bought, he was very concerned. Oh,
Look at that.
that's audio.
Magical.
I can just hold it. I'm not sure if it's. So our dad also was from a small town in Missouri called Excelsior Springs, and he was really concerned that what was happening across, this relates to design, what was happening across America in the 80s that maybe started earlier than the 80s, what he called Strip City, which is a biggest example of that he gave to me as a kid was Las Vegas. And he could see that many historic downtowns of towns were being abandoned, and supermarkets and banks were moving to the outer rings of the towns, and it really concerned him and bothered him, thought it was a horrible idea. So there were many things he made and took care of and preserved because he cared deeply about many, many, many things. And one of those was Main Street of Marfa. So he actually bought the bank building when the bank moved to create a new building that you could drive through. And then across the street from that is a beautiful building from the turn of the century called the Glasscock Building that he made into his architecture office. And a long restoration has been going on, and we're opening it in September in Marfa with a lot of fanfare. So come down and celebrate with us.
How are you gonna, the furniture that you're gonna have in it, is it gonna be all done, Judd?
He installed his furniture, and he actually wrote about that, how odd it must be for the town to see his odd furniture. I don't think he used the word odd. But there are plywood pieces, there are quite a few, 3 or 4 beautiful thick plywood tables, architecture table, etc., and a standing desk, a copper chair. Anyway, a good amount of furniture, along with architectural models
And some Alto furniture.
Yes.
Some Alto furniture, interesting.
Upstairs is the Alto furniture.
So which designers did he admire? Stickley, and then Shakers?
There's a Mies lamp
There's a lot.
across the street.
When he started buying the buildings in Marfa, and the buildings in Marfa came up for sale because the town was doing not well economically. So these were, $10,000 buildings, and nobody was interested in having them, so Don bought them. But of course, once you have buildings, you have excuse for buying more furniture. So
Yay,
he
go
started buying collectible furniture from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And so we have a lot down in Marfa that was only bought in the late 80s, later.
There's Rietveld. There's that George. There's a great lamp by George.
Anyway.
Somebody. Sorry.
George Nelson?
No.
It's a different.
No,
it's
he liked minimalist and possibly European, except for the Shakers, right? I mean,
There's
found
also
that he
some
was
really
talking-
beautiful Russian
Yeah,
furniture. He loved Swedish furniture from 1600s, 1700s. It's probably what he bought the most of. A place called Evergreen Antiques in Soho in the 80s.
That was famous. I heard about it. I never saw it, but I heard about it. So Flavin, why did you want to have the Bertoia chair in the slideshow? Did you want to talk about comfort?
Because everybody says, oh, but Don's furniture is so uncomfortable, unlike professional designers.
Well,
And it's not true.
No, Bertoia is terrible, but it was like an exception to the rule. But I
It's
agree.
the most uncomfortable chair ever designed.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
I mean, it's
Is
so
it,
painful.
Is there worse ones? No, I think it's
No, I think it's the
definitely
worst.
up there. Completely. I agree.
But sometimes some people put cushions on them.
Oh no, that they had to.
Yeah.
No, there are cushions there sold actually by the company. No, it's very true in some cases. Yeah, that's also quite interesting. The idea of comfort in furniture, because I was talking about this like point of encounter between the idea and the body.
Did you get to sit on the single day bed and spend some time there?
Yes. No, I loved it, but it has a mattress. But,
Yeah,
but
a
I
lot of the
loved it.
furniture actually
Yeah.
has a futon on it or
Never,
a cushion.
never pillows. Never the chairs.
We do
right?
at the office
Oh,
in
okay.
Marfa. I forgot them in my car when I packed the car. Forgot the question.
No, but definitely, also you get that question all the time. Well, professional designers come in every flavor. Some are terrible.
Well, exactly. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, that's the point, is that every chair is different, every designer is different, and you can't like put a litmus test on how a chair can come about or not.
No, it's true.
So,
And you know, when I was talking about my chip on the shoulder, you know, so because design in the hierarchy of the arts tends to be always lower, and I have encountered so many artists that think they can descend towards design, which is not
that's a
the
problem
case
with the
with-
artists.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. But you know, it's very funny. The only designer, the only artist that I found that could really handle it well were, believe it or not, Martin Purrier,
Yeah.
who, when he was having this personal exhibition at MoMA, you know, I was working a lot with the store, and the people from the store came to me and said, "Hey, Paola, Martin wants to make some objects for the store." And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's going to be a little sculpture that you can kind of like stand on one foot on, etc." And instead, he came with a pan scraper to wash pots and pans, and it was just like fantastic. Yeah, so it's not so generalized, but there are so many examples, and I loved that your father always also talked about that, of these artists that all of a sudden tend to make little sculptures that you can sit on, right?
Yeah.
So it's a
But
really,
that's part of the pretentiousness of the artists and the art world itself, because it, a lot of times, not always, a lot of times considers itself above so-called banal things, but it's the banal things that we live with every day. So that's actually the reverse is true.
Exactly.
And I mean, what could be more intimate than your relationship with your chair? I mean, you spend more time looking and being with your chair than practically anything else. So I think, to me, these are very important questions.
And your kitchen spoon and your kitchen skillet.
Absolutely.
No.
And this leads me to a question that you probably had so many times, but how was it to grow up with this furniture? Was it something that you didn't really pay attention to because it worked so well that it was just very valuable part of your life? Was it something you loved? Was it something that you kept bumping into? Like, how emotionally did you relate to the furniture, if at all?
I spent a lot of time on the single day bed in the two-story in front of the fireplace.
Yeah, it's it's so nice.
Yeah, it's really cozy
Yeah.
for kids. And when we moved to New York when we were teenagers, I actually got a banker's desk, and I didn't get that. I didn't bring that desk with me,
coziness, no.
but I don't know. I could have asked for it, I guess. I don't know. I don't know that I took it for granted, but I appreciated it. But also put it in the same range as the Stickley furniture that we were growing up with. I guess I don't know if I overtly loved it, but I appreciated it. And
But
then
like
when I
you went
wasn't
to play dates and you saw completely different homes.
They were weird.
Weird for you. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
they said
They
we
had
were weird.
plastic on their sofa. I couldn't figure out what the...
Yeah.
To me, this was a existential problem. You buy something that is so nice that you have to cover it up. It's like, wait a minute. Don't buy it in the first place. Then you don't have to cover it up. So it was all very weird. Yeah.
But my best friend, Gail Trewick, would come over and she'd be like, "Y'all are weird." And my dad would say, "Gail, it's not weird, it's different." And she'd be like, "Mm-hmm." Do you remember Gail?
That was my question I was going to ask.
Yeah, ask. That's okay. We can start asking questions.
I would go over to their house, and then it would be like this uncomfortable furniture you'd never seen anywhere in your whole life, especially being from Marfa and always traveled. And then you come
Can
to
you
our
all hear?
houses.
Because this is so nice.
It's
No,
so
wait, there's a microphone coming to you.
Hi, I grew up with Rainer and Flavin and Marfa, so my question was something you just said, and I was saying to Christy, when I would come to your house, it was so weird, you know, and
Weird.
and then I was wondering when you came to our houses, and then you went back, did you appreciate how minimal it was and how junky our houses were looking back?
I was jealous of a few things that other people
Waterbed,
had.
the waterbed Becky had.
No, I was never jealous of a waterbed.
Joke, that was my sister. But then I went recently, or I don't know,
I didn't
5 or 6
realize
years
Becky
ago.
had a waterbed.
I was jealous of the heating systems.
Oh, the
They had
heating system.
great
I was
heating
jealous
Not
of
going to the
systems.
bathroom outside.
I was jealous of closets.
Closets. Okay.
But then I asked for
So the other, I
one,
guess, I
and
don't
I got
know,
one.
6 or 7 years ago, Richard and I happened to be in California at something, and we went to the Tisch Art Barn, and we saw your father's art, your furniture installed there. And I said to Richard, this is my dream room. It just brought back so many memories of going to your house and sitting on that daybed in front of the fireplace. So that was my question, just as a local, going to their houses.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to say something about Don's background and maybe some of the motor behind his making and his ability to make his own spaces and furniture within those spaces and make his own worlds or world. So he spent a lot of time in the summers of his childhood with his grandmother, Una Kausert. And I think that made a big impression on him. And I think he, like many grandchildren with their grandparents, loved her and that relationship, and it stayed with him forever. And yet he saw his parents really run from that whole heritage of farming and in a way be embarrassed by the background of having, like dirt in their background. And I have a dear friend who says it's soil, it's not dirt. Like our grandma, our dad's mom had white carpets and Victorian couches, the same ones, pretty much similar style to the ones that got the plastic on them in Marfa. And if you step back, or if I step back and I think about it, it seems like Don more returned to the functionality and the objects and the straightforwardness of the farm environment and really ran from the interior decoration of his mother that like they would clean and oil the farm tools and then hang them on the wall. So they had the farm tools around to say that they had farmers in the background, but they were spotless, the tools. So there's a whole relationship, but I think it relates to the history of America and what has gone on, that the 50s were really looking down on people who were growing the food and working the land. And our dad not only made furniture for his kids.
He grew enough zucchini to feed a town.
Exactly.
Wow.
Had a huge vegetable garden. So he had an embrace of his grandparents' generation that his parents would never touch. And I think it's just helpful when you all are thinking about multi-generations and what's going on in America, just for that Judd perspective, I think it's helpful.
Super helpful. It's almost like an immigrant story, right? That the second generation rejects the origin story. But this also, and then
I'm not, our family's immigration was much earlier, so I'm not
sure.
familiar with that story.
But and this also, then I'm going to give you another question, and I apologize. I wanted to ask you about how the furniture ages, because one thing that is beautiful also about talking about real working furniture in working settings is how it ages. And I've seen 101 Spring is fantastic. It's aging so well. How do the plywood pieces age? Do they chip nicely?
The edges get dark.
The edges get dark.
Yeah. So this contrast goes away a bit.
Oh, that's nice.
But the plywood is very strong, and it doesn't chip like birch plywood or something like that. So it's pretty strong. And then like the hardwood furniture, like that exactly, develops a really nice patina. And the best one we have that I know of is Paula Cooper has one from about 1985 that is her regular working desk at the gallery.
Nice.
And looks fabulous. I mean,
And there's two chairs, and one chair says, "For Paula," from Don, and the other chair says, "For Cooper," from Judd. Very cute.
Very sweet. So more questions from the audience or comments. How many of you live with Don's furniture? One person.
All right.
Oh, Jeannie, hi. And
I will say one
Wait, it's coming, the mic.
So in our gallery, where you can buy Judd furniture, we have the library desk where we meet as a staff almost every day. And actually, it's so efficient because it has defined our meetings. It's not a comfortable chair that I make everybody sit around. And it means that our meetings last 40 minutes. And then everybody gets up. Of course, I'm very used to the chair because I sit in it all day long, and I think it's fantastic. But it has worn so beautifully. It's got a great patina, and everything we put on top, because we like Judd, put books on top of it. We put ceramics on top of it, and it is the most pristine pedestal. So we absolutely adore working with it.
Great. And, oh, please, over there. Here it comes.
About the Kim Kardashian.
Can you please,
The Kim Kardashian controversy.
I don't know what you're talking about.
How was it resolved?
We just resolved it. That's all I can say.
That's all you can say.
Recently.
How did you know that the furniture existed?
Somebody told us.
Okay.
it was not social media because she posts everything.
Some-
I think she had
I don't
posted
remember.
something about.
Yeah. She declared it as something and it wasn't. So
Yeah.
can't get into it though.
Yeah, that's right. Can't get into it. But you can find a lot online. Huh? Yeah, can you find a lot? Sorry, we have Christy here.
Is there anything that Don designed that you haven't produced? Salt shakers or smaller objects, placemats, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that were never made, and maybe a couple of furniture finishes that have never been actually produced.
But quite a few furniture designs.
But it depends is the answer. So
Quite a few furniture designs.
I think he's being vague on purpose.
On purpose, okay. Oh, so time will tell.
Talk a little bit about the timing of making the furniture because it is.
Jeannie.
Sorry, can you talk a little bit about the actual fabrication and the making?
are you
And
complaining
the
about the
timing.
lead times again, Jeannie?
Yes, always.
I think-
always. No, but,
No, but the
it makes
making
it,
is so
makes it
beautiful.
that everybody has something that's very unique. And,
So,
Yeah.
so the
Limited.
furniture is made basically on order. So if you ask, can I have, I don't know, an oak chair? Somebody has to go out and get the oak. They have to cut it down. They have to make the chair. None of that is a fast process. So it's a what are we at?
At least we're not waiting for the tree to grow.
Eight to something.
8 week is not so bad.
8 to
16.
16 week lead time.
Oh, but I mean,
But also, I think that is being, that's a work in progress as well, the lead time.
yeah. No, but I'm saying as an Italian design expert, okay.
We're on the Italian
6 weeks.
schedule.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not so bad.
Yeah,
I mean, in
yeah,
the
yeah.
United States, it can be really insane how
Yeah.
long things take.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good.
Right.
So, but also, about the making. Oh, but
She's
can I
bringing
just
the
say
mic.
something about the making? Or? Oh, here it is.
No, different
The
factories.
metal- okay, the metal
Different
chairs are made
fabricators.
different, okay.
And actually, I think the metal lead time is shorter.
But the making is amazing. As once again a design curator, and I also got a chance to speak with what's the name of the guy that does the production?
Christopher?
Christopher.
Yeah.
I got a chance to speak with Christopher, and he explained to me a little bit of the precision that goes into the making. So the steel gets made in Switzerland. The wood gets made
United States.
in the United States, but where?
United States.
Oh my God. So you keep it secret. All right. So it gets made in the United States. All right, then that's
But
not
did you
going
want to
further.
ask something?
No, I wanted to ask about the joints. I wanted to ask really about the details because at the beginning, as you said, he didn't really know how to make the furniture. And so he worked with,
Yeah, so
The
there are
craftspeople.
details that he got rid of. So some of the fancy, are they called dovetails?
Yes. So
Yeah.
when Don started having the furniture professionally made in New York, where the fancy guys are, they would make dovetails and
That's it,
fancy
that's it, that's where
joints,
she was talking about
and Don would reject the furniture because he didn't want all that stuff. This is like an ego thing. It's like, get rid of that. What are you doing?
That's
So they had to tone down the furniture. So by the time he was making so-called production furniture for other people, there are no dovetails and nothing like that.
That's the Rietveld Z chair, by the way. That's not a Judd chair, but that is a beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful
It's
Z
Rietveld.
chair by Rietveld.
Yes. So
But
interesting.
the other three pieces are Judd. That's a Judd cart, and that's a Judd low bench, and this table, and all these pieces were designed in maple for that floor. And in the furniture book, they're called the fourth floor table, fourth floor low bench.
I love that story about having them to tone down the furniture. There's over there. You already have the mic. Perfect.
Sort of actually alluding to what you'd just been speaking about, how when he was making it, that perhaps he wasn't a great carpenter, then it went into production. What is his expectation of perfectionism in the work? And I asked this question also because I was at a gallery once with one of the metal shelf pieces as a work of art, and it was one of the sequence ones, 1, then 2, then 4, then 8. And I was looking at it, and there was a curator who was speaking to somebody else and pointing to like this one area where the metal just didn't meet absolutely. And, just this small imperfection, and how this person at least said that that was something that he embraced. So I wanted to see if you would comment about perfectionism in his work.
I can't see the piece, but Don was not interested in perfection, because perfection is a utopian ideal of that you can't even define it. But he's very interested in things well made, and in a certain case, not fancy. Like, don't do the dovetails. They're not you doing anything. But if you're going to make something, it should be as well made as you can do it. But at the same time, there's an artwork made out of mill aluminum that was done in the 90s, and it's full of scraped aluminum. And he was fine with that, because that's how it came out of the factory. Yeah. So it all depends is the answer.
If one thing had to be precise, though, it would be the dimensions. So, and also you talked about how when he actually thought about different dimensions and variations, I think that interview we put in the book talks about his proclivity to variations, which is such a great piece. He would not know. He would think of things and know that until he saw it, he wouldn't know if he liked it. It's not like he would think of something and go, "Oh, that's going to work." There's another favorite quote of mine: "Things that exist, and everything is on their side." Because there's just so far the brain can go in thinking of something until you just have to make it to then see if what you're thinking is actually working, whether it actually works. So both in furniture and art, there were moments where something he thought of did not actually work, whether somebody else made it or not, that the dimensions he had thought of were not working out actually. But in the pieces that we make at Judd Furniture, and by the way, Judd Furniture is owned by Judd Foundation, so we are both Judd Foundation and Donald Judd Furniture. Donald Judd Furniture makes things to this exact dimension that Donald Judd liked when he saw it, he got it to exist.
Other questions? There's one over there. Oh, then we'll come to you. There's one here, and then we'll come to the gentleman with the baseball hat.
Hi there, thank you. I was just curious if you could comment on how he thought about kind of negative space, or I think of a lot of his pieces as being really beautiful kind of framing elements for, especially we've spent a lot of time in Marfa and thinking about a lot of his pieces as framing elements for the sky or for landscapes. And I think that that's true both in his furniture pieces, in his architectural spaces at Judd and Chinati, and then also in some of the artworks, especially in the fields. And just was curious if you had talked about how he thought about that, or how he maybe even documented or drew things beforehand to think about framing and negative
I'll say
space.
a couple of things, and then maybe you want to say something about negative space or about a black pathfinder. But for example, none of the furniture in Judd spaces is ever put up against the wall. And that starts to really make sense the more time you spend with it. And also other pieces of furniture, I've noticed that they look better if they're not up against a wall. It could be an alto table. So being aware of the space that is around a piece of furniture or maybe some other object, but we'll stick to furniture. And then I was installing a black steel stove not too long ago, and I was trying to figure out, in a very small room that was 12 feet by 12 feet, I was trying to figure out where to put the black safety plate, and I was all like in a conundrum about it, and then got a message from above about like, remember the negative space, and I just started dealing with what was visible of the floor around the black steel plate. And I think it's a way of seeing, and it's something that is really, really valuable, and it took me a long time to appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to say about negative space?
He was just hypersensitive to space, negative or positive, so there wasn't a distinction. It was just space. So.
Over there, baseball cap, yes.
Hi, I wanted to ask, it's a little echoey. I wanted to ask about Judd's relationship with manufacturers and how he kind of built that dialogue and that larger kind of vocabulary needed to articulate a concept. As you said, he spoke very openly about, he wasn't a craftsperson, but he clearly had a level of vocabulary and he knew the terms well enough to communicate concept.
Yeah.
Well, he knew what he wanted, and his first fabricator was his father, actually, who had retired and was a woodworker. And when Don's early sculpture was getting too complicated and definitely beyond his skill level, his father helped make the works. And I don't think it was ever a problem because he knew exactly what he wanted, and he could easily convey to the fabricators what he wanted, and they would figure it out. So it was not a problematic situation. I would say that is a problematic situation for things like Bernstein Brothers, where they were not used to making nice things. They were used to making galvanized ducts for air conditioning.
It was a learning curve.
And as they were not alert to the way things looked, he had to help them figure that out.
And then when one particular guy got really good at making things the way Don liked them at Bernstein, Don got in trouble for tipping Jose.
For tipping, ah.
Yeah. Don was trying to keep him going. But I want to say something about Don's general ability to work with people. He really respected, well, kids and adults and people in general and their minds and their abilities, and kind of had a inherent belief that if you wanted to do something, you would be able to do it. And I think that respect that he gave people, whether you were like an 18-year-old who had just made a few things out of wood and this was your first piece of furniture ever, just really believed in people. So got along with craftspeople and engineers and really excelled at those relationships. So it might not be for everybody, because not everybody might have the natural mutual respect that comes within that relationship that then creates a piece of furniture or something else.
All this is so Italian. I don't understand why he was not making furniture in Italy. Like it was his place. Other questions that you might have? Oh yeah, Harry, all the way in the back.
Harry.
Hi. So first question was, where's that?
In the Chinati Mountains, south of Marfa. And
I think we drove through that on the way to Marfa. It's spectacular.
yes, and if there wasn't fog on the left, you'd be looking at the Sierra Madres of Mexico on the far left.
And the second question is a little bit more personal, and so you don't, forgive me. But when I went to Marfa, I was bowled over by the beauty and just astonished. It required involvement in seeing the work and seeing the place and seeing the furniture and being in it. If you haven't seen it in real life, the minimal doesn't come across in photographs. it's a tangible thing.
Thanks, Harry. We're glad this was recorded.
And but the impression I got was that Don was an insane control freak. And you grew up in this family, and my father was a designer. I'm a parent with strong opinions about my physical environment. So what I'm going to ask is, did you ever rebel, and how? Either aesthetically or personally. That's all.
Do you want me to take a stab?
Go
at
for it.
So there was a lot of mess around growing up, and I don't remember being controlled about the mess. The only moments of control that I specifically remember is that, do you remember when milk used to come in the large gallon jugs? Mm-hmm. He really didn't like that jug, and he didn't want that jug on the dining table. It was, I think, the shape of that. Like if it was the half-gallon carton, it was fine. But it was that jug. And then the other thing in New York City is that...
You had to put it on the floor.
Yeah.
She didn't finish.
We had to put it on the floor. What? You were with him on that one, yeah. I don't know, how many kids do you have, Harry? Wow, okay, so you got a lot of milk to handle. And then in New York City, we were teenagers, and it's true, we would literally sit on the sidewalk with our backpacks. And then when we would get home, throw those backpacks on the dining table, and he thought that was kind of gross. I know where those backpacks have been. So that was more of a New York City dirt and filth thing. But I think there's even a photo of my messy room. I mean, there was
even the initial one.
Yeah.
One thing to remember is that the way Marfa and Spring Street look now is not necessarily how they looked when we lived there, because we were living there. And for instance,
no, but we should make
at
various
times there were pots strewn throughout Spring Street because he was sorting them to send to Marfa or books or whatever. But the one thing, going to what you're saying, is that Don was a fanatic about his books, and he would never crack the spine. So one time...
You cracked the spine?
Cracked the spine.
You did it. Do you remember the book?
Were you mad?
No, I just thought it was funny.
Oh, okay.
We did get in trouble for various things, but we actually did do bad things. So.
All right, this is over.
Okay.
This is over. Yeah, no, nothing more. So,
I think we broke things. Yeah.
Birthdays?
No, we broke some things. I'm trying to remember why we got in trouble. Definitely it was breaking something at Spring Street. It happens.
Yeah, it does. So,
anything else?
I just would like to ask you one last question.
Okay.
If you had a dream of how you would like to see the furniture collection evolve, what would it be? Would you like
evolve?
It to be evolve, yes.
You mean as a business?
Make it faster as a business. Would you like it to deliver faster? I don't think it's necessary. Would you like it to be more affordable? Would you like anything, or are you perfectly happy with how it is?
Okay, I'm ready. Mm-hmm. I would like every community to have their own forest that is for them, their own wood shop, and that each piece of furniture is made where the tree is grown.
So you would like them to have their own place and their own minds and their own brains to be in. You would like it to be a lesson, not a product, but rather a lesson.
Like my dad, I'm very interested in decentralized, self-sufficient communities.
Beautiful. I mean,
she lives in a place with no trees.
Actually, I should say that the trees that used to be there were cut down by the white people who came in the 1880s, and we will be replanting those trees.
Ranger's at it, yeah.
Yes, you shall. So, yes, this deserves.
Thank you so much for this really lovely talk. There are books outside. Please do not break the spines. The live auction.
You can break the spine.
The live auction is up in the gallery. Please stop by and see it. But the book signing's outside. Library up above.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paola. No, it's been really a privilege.
Thank you for inviting me.
See, not so bad, right?
No.